Welcome to our Tax Talk Thursday series. This series is dedicated to sharing strategies to support organizations providing free tax filing services. Today, we will be focusing on using data sources to inform free tax filing programs. Next slide. This session is brought to you by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities Get It Back campaign. The Center is a nonpartisan research and policy institute that pursues federal and state policies designed both to reduce poverty and inequality in equitable and effective ways. The Get It Back campaign is a national effort to connect eligible people to tax benefits. We promote the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, free tax preparation, and other tax benefits through working with a network of diverse partners. You can find more resources and information on our website, taxoutreach.org. We are happy to have two presenters joining us for this session. Today, we are joined by Joya Yorgi from Arkansas Asset Builders. Joya Yorgi is the founder and executive director of Arkansas Asset Builders, a nonprofit based in Conway, Arkansas, that seeks to empower hardworking Arkansans to flourish economically through free income tax preparation and financial literacy programs. Joya fell in love with volunteer tax preparation while in grad school in Washington, D.C. A decade and 3 moves later, she founded Arkansas Asset Builders to ensure that free tax prep services are available to taxpayers and volunteers in Central Arkansas. And she is still a tax nerd who loves to help people prepare their tax returns. We are also excited to have Claire Zippel from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities join us today. Claire Zippel is a senior research analyst in the Income and Poverty Trends team. Before joining the center, Claire worked as a data analyst at Enterprise Community Partners, where she provided consulting services in support of evidence-based community development. Prior to that, she was the housing policy analyst and research coordinator at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, conducting research on housing subsidy programs, poverty trends, and tax credits. Thank you to these presenters for joining us today. Before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know that there will be a Q&A and discussion section after the presentations, so feel free to type questions in the chat as they arise, and we will be sure to address them afterwards. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Claire to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be with you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen where I have some slides. There we go. Okay, so today I'm going to share a couple of data sources that might be useful to you all as you think about free tax filing programs and outreach to reach people. I'm going to start off with some data that might be useful in terms of conducting outreach and targeting services to people who are potentially eligible for the EITC or the Child Tax Credit and its refundable component, the ACTC. The first data source I'm going to talk about is what we call the Program Participation Dashboard. I'll do a screen share in a sec so you can actually see it. But I wanted first to just sort of introduce the data on the dashboard that I'm going to be talking about today, which is our data on the estimated characteristics of people who are eligible for the EITC. So we have common industries, occupations, languages spoken, a lot of demographic information, including education, race and ethnicity, other demographics, and we have all of this by state, and we have it for selected counties and metropolitan areas. And potential uses of this data could be, again, targeting outreach and services to communities with many potential EITC filers, and also potentially educating partners and funders about the population who's eligible for the EITC. So I'll go ahead and show you what the dashboard looks like. So I will be dropping links to everything that I show in the chat. So here's our dashboard. You can start out by viewing all of the tables that we have. Let's see. As you can see, we have a bunch of data here, but what I'm going to focus on is the estimated characteristics of eligible filers. This is for 2018. I'll talk more about why that is in a second. You can see here we have a table by state. We have data on percent of filers who are veterans. Again, a lot of demographics, common languages spoken, which could be helpful to know in terms of having translation services or translated outreach materials available. And we also have the next table on this list is common industries and occupations of eligible filers. So here we have industries by state, and we also have common occupations, and these are sort of sorted into occupation groups. And so we have these, you can see by state in this sort of interactive interface, but you can also download all of this data, the data in this table and the data in the previous table I showed by in an Excel format. It includes the same data that's in the table, but it also has sub-state data, which I know is really, really valuable for some folks. So here is, for example, the spreadsheet that I would have downloaded. You can see I have, oh, that's very zoomed out. I have sort of the same data that was in the table, but I can also zoom in on certain metropolitan areas. I can look at selected counties. So not every county and not every metropolitan area is available. It tends to be larger counties that we have available. And then we also have the data broken out into sort of non-metropolitan or partially non-metropolitan areas but I think primarily what folks might find useful is the data by metropolitan area and county. And again, all of this is things like language, industries, occupations, demographics of people who are potentially eligible for the child tax credit. All right, I'll go back to my PowerPoint here. Just a couple of caveats I want to share when you're using this data. So these are estimates that we produce based on Census Bureau household survey data. So the Census Bureau surveys a lot of people every year. We can look at those responses, and based on, people's family composition, based on the income they report, we can estimate whether they're eligible for the EITC, and then we can sort of aggregate that up. So again, these are estimates, and they shouldn't be compared with IRS data on actual EITC claims. The goal is more to give people a sense of, what does the population who's potentially eligible for the EITC look like? Who is this program helping, or who could it help if everybody was reached? The data that's currently available, the detailed data that I just showed is for 2018. But we hope to have updated data soon. I wouldn't expect that the 2018 data is that when we update the data, it will be radically different from 2018. But I just wanted to provide that caveat. So again, this is our the dashboard characteristics of people eligible for the EITC. So next, we also have data on EITC and CTC claims. Some or many of you might be already familiar with the data the IRS publishes by state, county, metropolitan area, zip code. So the sort of value add of what we have on the dashboard is we're able to break out the data on claims by congressional district and by state legislative districts, so state, house, and senate districts. And I'll go ahead and show you that table as well. So here's the table, EITC and CT claims by state and congressional district. And I'll scroll down a bit. The data we have here is for tax year 2021, which, as you all probably know, was kind of an unusual year for the EITC. But you can, let's see. But we, excuse me, are in the fall going to update this for tax year 2022, which is kind of a more normal year. But just so you're aware, these numbers might be a little unique to 2021. But hopefully this gives you a sense of the kind of data that we have. So we have a number of filers who claim the EITC, you know, that is people who actually filed the tax return and claimed the EITC. And then the total amount for 2021, again, the entire child tax credit was refundable, so a little unusual, but typically will break out in a quote unquote normal year who got the CTC versus the refundable portion. And if you click the arrow next to the state name here, it will go ahead and pop out and give you rows for each district. So this is the congressional district table, but we also have tables for state house and for state legislative districts. So if you were happening to talk to a legislator or a policymaker, you know, you would have data specific to their district.
If it's over 250,000, yes. If no, then
So yeah, so potentially you choose potentially educating policymakers about their constituents who are helped by the EITC and CTC. And then also giving them a sense in terms of, you know, the total credit amount can also tell them how much money and therefore economic activity is flowing to their district thanks to the EITC and CTC to kind of build support for these programs and make sure that everybody who is eligible is able to get the credits that they've earned. So next I was asked to provide some data sources that could be used for kind of getting a sense of where the population potentially eligible for the EITC or ACTC or even tax prep services more broadly might live. And so I'm going to show you in a sec the kinds of data that you can find from the American Community Survey, which again, I'll put all these links in the chat. Some or many of you might already be familiar with using ACS data, but I think I just wanted to sort of provide sort of a hint that you can get a rough sense of where people potentially eligible for the EITC or ACTC live by looking at ACS data on individuals and families who are below the poverty line, or, you know, the number of households who are below a certain income level. It doesn't give you precise numbers of who is eligible, but it could potentially give you a sense of where to look at the hyperlocal level. So I will show you a map here. Oh, and it's reset, which is unfortunate. Oh, okay. So this is my hometown, Lynchburg, Virginia. I don't know if we have any Central Virginia folks on this call. So what I have done is I've actually been able to create a map of American Community Survey data. So here I'm seeing the number of workers below the poverty line by census tract. I could also see this kind of information by county, by metropolitan area, by a bunch of other geographies. But this kind of neighborhood level data might be useful to say, you know, if it looks like there's a concentration of low-paid workers living in this area, you know, maybe I would want to make sure that my outreach efforts or that my services were targeted to or accessible to people who are tending to live in those areas. Again, looking at poverty status is a really rough proxy. People who aren't under the poverty line but are slightly above it are eligible for the EITC. And these are sort of workers, not families, but again, it's just intended to give you sort of a rough proxy. And this tool, I'm not going to go through exactly how to use it. I just wanted to give you a sense of some potential, but essentially I'm able to sort of pick here which data point I want to see, whether I want to see the number or percent. I can even change how I want it to be colored or what geographic areas or geographic levels I want to be shown. And you can pick out whichever data point you would like to see on a map. So here I'm looking at something similar, not necessarily workers, but families. I believe here. Yeah, so here I'm looking at families with income below the poverty level. So low income families, not workers. Distribution's a little different, but again, you know, I can click through some of these, you know, family types that I might be interested in to see where folks are living and look at the map this way. This is, I mean, the two maps I just showed are just like on poverty of workers and of families are really just scratching the surface of what's available from the EITC. So you can look at, this is just national data, but you can break it out down to, I think these tables go down to the census tract or neighborhood level. So you could use this to determine, you know, where people with incomes below $50,000 live, things like that. Okay, the next sort of data source in this genre that I wanted to show folks is this tool called On the Map. So the American Community Survey can give you a sense of like where people with certain characteristics live. But one thing that folks might be interested in is, you know, maybe looking at where folks work, right? So for this On the Map tool that I'll show in a second, you can look up sort of a map of the number of low paid workers by place of work. It goes down to, you know, the block level, so really small geographic levels, and you can look by industry. And this can give you a rough sense of where workers potentially eligible for the EITC are employed. And I'll go ahead and now show this one. And of course, it reset. Let me see if I can really quickly. Get this to zoom in here. This tool is a bit unwieldy. So hopefully I can get this up and running pretty quickly. Okay, so what this map is showing me is sort of the concentration of the workplaces of workers who earn you know, $1,200 per month or less. So folks who would you know, very likely be in the income range for the EITC. You could even go a little bit further up. You know, it depends on their family type. So here I'm able to see, you know, there's a concentration of these you know, lower paid jobs around here. I can also look up by industry sector. So, you know, things like retail, trade, help, accommodation and food services. You know, those are certainly things that one would think of. But I can also click on, I see there are a lot of jobs with healthcare and social assistance. I can see the distribution of those. Since this is my hometown, I know this concentrated area right here is the local hospital and associated medical offices. So the information like this might say, you know, maybe I should do some outreach around that area or try to have a partnership with the hospital to educate their employees. Again, I'm a data person, not an outreach person, but just wanted to sort of give you a sense of what kind of insights might be useful that you could get from data like this. And then I guess switching gears a little bit, I was also asked to provide some tips on doing some geographic analysis of client data. So if you have, you know, a big spreadsheet or a big sort of database of all of your clients, the folks who have been served with tax prep services, maybe you have their full address, maybe you just have their zip code, and kind of translating that into a geographic profile to be able to say, you know, oh, we served, you know, X number of people, you know, in this county or in this, you know, state house representatives district. There are a couple of tools here that folks could use. I think I'm running a little low on time. So I'll just very briefly show, I went ahead and ran the center's office, the place where I work through this geocoder. It was able to, tell me, whether it's in an urban area. I know sometimes the IRS is interested in who's served in urban areas versus rural areas with tax prep programs. You can also do sort of a bulk upload of addresses to this tool. And then, if you only have zip code information, you can use a sort of a crosswalk that's produced by this tool. And again, I'm moving a little quickly, but it will basically, and you can get this in CSV format too, come up with a list of zip codes, and then it will tell you, for example, which county the zip code's in. And the county might cross, or the zip code might cross multiple counties. So you could look up between zip codes and cities, between, zip codes and legislative districts. So again, I'll wrap up with that, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if folks are interested in learning more about these tools to create geographic profiles of your clients, I'd be happy to talk offline. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you.
Folks, again, my name is Joya Yorgi. I'm from Arkansas Asset Builders in Central Arkansas. And I have had the privilege of thinking and working with several of you probably on the call, as well as others in the VITA field, about using data to inform our programs. So I want to share a little bit of what I've learned, as well as some of the questions and things that I'm working on or trying to wrap my head around or figure out these days. And I welcome you when we get to the Q&A, the discussion section, to also just share the things that you are thinking about or wondering about, and maybe we can collectively help each other think creatively about continuing to use data to inform our programs. So here are some of my resources that I have found especially helpful and relevant for my VITA program. And I'm organizing these around specific questions that we might be asking and we want data to answer. And I'm going on the kind of who, what, when, where, why questions, and focusing specifically on the who, the where, and the what. We already have some good ideas about the why, so who, what, when, when tax season, we all know that as well. And the how, we work on that every day. So who, where, and what. So some of the questions that we ask about who needs service, there's two sides to that coin, right? We have the data about who are we already serving, and then as Claire was pointing out, we have data about who may need the service, and those are overlapping circles, and we want to try to think about who may qualify that we are not already serving. Similarly, the where, we have some information about where our current clients are located, but we might want to think about which areas near us are not being adequately served by free tax prep. So how do we start to get at those answers to those questions? And then the what, thinking about impacts of our programs. What are the things that we're doing, the outputs and outcomes of our program? This is something that anybody in VITA has already thought about. But you may not have thought as carefully about the really long-term impacts of what we're hoping to do, and what benchmarks or baselines do you want to compare that to actually demonstrate the effect of our programs in the big picture or over the long term? So those are some of the things that we can use data to help inform. So first, let's start the who. So this is really getting down to the demographics of the clients that we're serving. So the big source that we already have access to is our TaxSlayer reports, our TaxSlayer data. If you have not played around with all of the reports that come out of TaxSlayer, I encourage you to. I have a link that I will provide to kind of a meta guide to what is included in each of the different TaxSlayer reports. They are overlapping and in interesting and curious ways. So familiarize yourself with all the different reports and see what information and which reports are the most helpful for you. You may also gather some of your own data, custom intake, custom demographic surveys. But there's other interesting sources of data you might already have, such as your appointment booking service or other kinds of client management tools or apps that you use for your program. It may be people that have requested help but didn't actually show up at the tax site. So that might be some interesting data to mine for your program. Your social media audience, there are interesting demographic analysis tools in Facebook, Instagram, potentially even your email or other social media and outreach platforms that you use to think about with you, what are their demographics. Some external data sources, though, that are interesting, and this is where I've begun to think more about. I've had funders ask, okay, so how many of your clients are ALICE? So ALICE stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And this is a measure of household financial stability, ability to pay for basic goods and services that a family may need to survive. And there are certain thresholds, sort of like the federal poverty level, for example, that said, okay, for a household of a certain characteristic, what is the basic income that household would need in order to survive. And you can look potentially at the households that you are serving and see whether or not your households that you're serving with VITA are below that ALICE survival income budget or above that ALICE survival income budget. Obviously, the funder that I was talking to that's very interested in this ALICE data, they would love to see us being able to demonstrate that we are serving households who are below the into account the household size and even the age of dependents in the household. So there's work to be done. I haven't figured it out. This is what I'm working on right now. Other characteristics, you might look at percent of the federal poverty level that a household is at. Again, it takes into account family size, and that's not something we always look at for VITA. It's just like, well, that's the household, but how big is this household and how does that correlate to where they fall on the poverty level threshold? You might even look at SNAP or other benefit eligibility charts. If your organization likes to connect people with other benefits, you might want to see, okay, the families that we're serving, the households that we're serving, potentially eligible based on income for these other benefits or services or not. And then the FFEIC income, this is a data source that banks use to validate their Community Reinvestment Act, CRA requirements. So I've been asked by bank funders to show how the income of the people that I'm serving compares to the FFEIC median incomes in my service area. So this is another piece of data to look at and know whether your households are above or below some of these targets. As Claire already showed us, we've got the census is a great source of data for us, the program participation dashboard, and then I would also just highlight to you that the IRS has great data available that you can access directly. Specifically, the statistics of income Form 1040 data set breaks out all the different aspects of tax credits, use of paid preparers, free tax prep, all the different items on Form 1040 by income level. So you can look at households that are below 50K, below 75K. It doesn't one-to-one line up with our VITA like eligibility guideline, but it's close, and you can look at that as well. All right, moving on here. So talking about where, the data that we have easily is client street address, city, state, zip code from TaxSlayer. But as Claire was showing us in one of her last slides, this doesn't easily map to some of the other things that you might want to know about. Zip code does not always equal county. There are some zip codes that be across two different counties. Zip codes may be inside and outside of a city limit. There might be geographies that you care about depending on your funders or partners or whatever. And zip code is just not the best proxy or way to categorize your client's geography. You might, in order to get around this, already be collecting data about somebody's county of residence or other geographies that you care about. But I encourage you to make use of some of the tools that Claire mentioned in order to make those correlations, to use the geocoding and to use those crosswalk tools to think carefully about what the data that I have, specifically the zip codes, how can I map that onto other geographic designations? Thinking about political designations, congressional districts, state legislative districts, even down to the county level. An example I can give, I was courting my county government, trying to get a rescue plan act funds. And I wanted to show, based on the county voting districts, how many of my clients lived in each voting district. So it ended up being a manual process for me to go through and just sort of use Google Maps to geocode my data. I wish that I would have had an automated geocoding tool, but that could be a really, really valuable tool, especially if your sites are a lot larger than mine. Another interesting geographic designation that I thought about is utility service areas. I know in my area, one of the utility providers, Entergy, is a big supporter of VITA and free tax prep, and utilities in general make great partners for free tax prep, partners and funders. So you might want to know, do the people that I serve live within a specific utility provider's service area? They might not want to fund you if most of your people don't live in their area, but if you can show that most of your people live in that area, it makes a much stronger business case to them. Another question that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is urban versus rural. This is a question that the IRS wants us to answer on VITA grants. Are you serving rural clients? They want us to serve more rural clients. But figuring out, okay, which of my taxpayers are rural is not an easy thing to figure out. So some of these tools can help you map those addresses to specific urban versus rural definitions. And there are even more confusingly multiple definitions at play. So I would love any best practices from you guys if you've figured out how do you know whether your clients are urban or rural? How do you map this out? I would love to hear more from you about this. And then lastly, the what impact is being made. These are just a list of things that I already track from my program, and it kind of ranges. I'm not categorizing these specifically as outputs, outcomes, and impacts. That's not the point of today's presentation, but some of the things that I'm thinking about down to the nitty-gritty of how many tax returns that we are preparing, how many taxpayers are being served, up to those dollar amounts, right, that we love to report about the annual tax refund, maybe cumulative tax refunds of your program over the years that you've been working in your community, annual and cumulative tax prep fees saved. One of the things that we like to track is a financial well-being score, and we are hoping to demonstrate changes in our taxpayer financial well-being over time, that the fact that people are accessing free tax prep has a demonstrable positive impact on their assessment of their own financial well-being. So that is a data point that we add to our custom intake forms and we track over time. You can also look at economic impact of tax refunds on a service area, both the refunds that are directly generated by your program, as well as kind of the overall economic impact of EITC claimed by all people in your area. And then you can look at some benchmarks such as population savings rates, of debt and delinquency, depending on what other things your specific organization and mission prioritize. It might be housing, whatever it is. You can look at some of these benchmarks and hope that your work, you're wanting to see positive changes in these population benchmarks over time. So you need to keep your eyes on those. Look back maybe at historical data before your organization started working and say, this was the status quo 10 years ago, and how has it changed? And how can I say that my organization has had an impact or been part of the change? You can look at the IRS data and look at changes in overall population use of paid tax preparers, of use of instant refunds, maybe of usage of free tax filing services. It might be VITA, it might be direct file, it might be My Free Taxes, whatever it is, but this is an outcome that I think we all want in the free tax preparation world. So we want to see changes in those use of free tax filing services in our populations generally. So keep your eyes on those pieces of data, report them, celebrate them, because this is the impact together that we're all making.